What are we doing with Dabo? After your boy, sitting in this chair last year, crowned him as my preseason national champ. What a bonehead. It's time. It's time to win the SEC. It's time to really play for that national championship. Where's the pressure point game this year? I don't think it happens until the CFP. I don't think you can pump the brakes on the expectations. Hey, what's up, everybody? It is the Joel Klatt Show. I'm Joel Klatt. This show is brought to you by Graduate by Hilton. We thank them for their support, as always, as we roll on here in the offseason, getting you all set for 2026 in college football. I cannot wait, although there are some coaches that we need to talk about, and just the pressure index. Let's get right into it. I'm going to have 10 names here today. I'm going to put them into 5 categories, and basically these categories are what the fan bases are either asking themselves or thinking at this point. We had the same categories last year. I thought it worked out really well, and so we're going to bring it back. In fact, if you go back to last year's episode, 3 of our 10 guys actually lost their job, fired mid-season, including 2 of the guys in one category, Brian Kelly and James Franklin. Here are the categories. All right, here we go. This is, again, what fan bases are thinking to themselves and or asking themselves. 1, just happy you're here. How about fan bases that are thinking to themselves, we like you, but others are just trying to be patient? There are other fan bases that are asking themselves, is this going to work? And there are some fan bases that are thinking, hey, it's time. By the way, the it's time category last year was lethal. Brian Kelly and James Franklin, both in the it's time category, both ended up getting fired. These aren't necessarily the hottest seats. These are just like the coaches, highly prominent coaches in college football that fall into these categories. Again, 10 names, 5 categories. Here we go. How restless are these fan bases? Let's start with Kalen DeBoer at Alabama. Okay, so they made the SEC championship game. They won a playoff game, but they did get hammered in that championship game by Georgia and then got absolutely crushed by Indiana. Indiana didn't even have to throw passes in the second half. In fact, I've been told that on the sideline, they were saying to each other, hey, we don't even have to throw the ball. We can just run it. They ran it 50 times at Alabama. Not great. Meanwhile, Alabama could not run the football. I think Kalen took the hardest job in America at maybe the most difficult time ever, following Nick Saban. He did get a 2-year extension in April through the 2032 season, and he's gone 20-8. Listen, it has been bad, and I still really like Kalen DeBoer. In his first 2 seasons, 20-8 is not terrible, but 4 losses in each season. We haven't seen 4 losses from Alabama since Saban's first year in 2007. Going into this season, I think the pressure's on him. With a quarterback who hasn't started a game in his career, whether it's Austin Mack or Keelan Russell, the schedule's not terrible, but the first 5 games are very winnable, and then they've got this critical 4-game stretch in the middle of the season, and that's where I'm going to focus here, because there's always a pressure point with all of these coaches in the pressure index. Where is the pressure point in the year, in the schedule? And I'm falling on this October 24th game against Texas A&M. Here's that 4-game stretch that I was talking about. If you're watching on YouTube, congratulations. Go subscribe if you haven't. This 4-game stretch is October 10, Georgia, October 17 at Tennessee, October 24th, A&M, then they have an open date, and then November 7th at LSU. That's really difficult. And so the pressure point for me is A&M. I think that DeBoer could even explain away a loss to Georgia, and certainly even at LSU. I think LSU is going to have an incredibly talented roster. But that pressure point is where the fan base is going to really be asking themselves what's going on. So right now, this fan base is just trying to be patient. They're trying to be patient because their expectations are so high. So high. And he's fallen a touch short. Even though he's been wildly successful, he's 20-8, and I get that. He's been to the CFP. They won a CFP game on the road, no less, against Oklahoma. But there is a sense still that these Bama fans are just trying to be patient with Kalen DeBoer. There is a question in the back of their head. They're trying to see if this is going to work out, and now they're going to go out there with an inexperienced quarterback. So that's going to be very difficult for them. A loss at home to A&M would be a loss against one of those teams that's trying to knock them from their perch atop the SEC. Right now, Georgia runs the conference, but clearly Alabama has been right there. I've given you the stats in previous shows just about the domination that Georgia and Alabama have had in the SEC. And if you lose to that A&M team, now all of a sudden you've got to go a couple weeks later to LSU. That's not good. And Lane Kiffin will be waiting there for you. So that's the pressure point game. DeBoer and that fan base, I think that fan base is just trying to be patient right now. If you disagree, by the way, and you're a Bama fan, get in the comments below and tell me what you think about just trying to be patient. How about Steve Sarkisian? Year 6 in Austin for Sark, and they've been to the semifinal twice. Texas opened last season as the number 1 team in the country, missed the playoff. He does have 3 straight 10-win seasons, but he's got Arch Manning. And they just spent a lot of money, and he's been doing some talking in this offseason. They loaded up with weapons around. They've got that huge game against Ohio State and a really difficult schedule, one of the most difficult schedules in the country. And yet, don't you get the sense that after those 2 semifinal appearances, and last year maybe an underwhelming performance from the Texas Longhorns, I think it's time. I think that this fan base looks at Sark and looks at Texas and they say, all right, it's time. It's time to win the SEC. It's time to really play for that national championship. But here's the pressure point game. And this is what gets very interesting. The pressure point game is actually basically out of the gate week 2 against Ohio State. Because if Ohio State rolls into your building and beats you, it is a severe uphill climb to get yourself back in the playoff. I think it might be difficult for them to get to the playoff even if they beat Ohio State. Their schedule is brutal. Check out all of these games. September 12th, week 2, Ohio State. Also in September, a trip to Neyland in Tennessee. They've got Red River, of course. You've got Ole Miss at home. You've got to go to LSU. You've got to go to Texas A&M. That doesn't even include, those 6 don't even include, by the way, tricky games like Florida or at Missouri. So again, really difficult schedule. The pressure point comes early. If they lose that game early, that fan base is going to be upset because in their minds, I believe they're thinking to themselves, it's time. It's time. So Sark falls into that category. Steve Sarkisian, year 6 in Austin. Great team, great roster, great quarterback. It's time. How about Matt Rhule at Nebraska? Where are we going to go with Matt Rhule at Nebraska? Let me just start with this before I start describing it. Let's put him in the category right away. Is this going to work? I know that they're trying to preach patience with their fan base, but I hear from Cornhusker fans. Great fans, by the way. Some of the best. Great fans. And they all wonder to themselves, is this going to work? Year 3 for Rhule in his history has always been a huge bump. Temple and Baylor. Last year was year 3. This year, year 4. He's gone 19-19. He's 500. Rhule was known for that year 3 pop. And they did win 7 in the regular season. That's the first time they've won at least 7 in the regular season since 2016. You can say it was a step forward, but the way that they finished, it doesn't feel like that. He did get a 2-year contract extension through 2032. That was primarily because that Penn State job came open, and he obviously has ties to Penn State, so he got that extension. But then they lost 4 of their last 5. And to be fair, they lost their quarterback. Royola got hurt. Wasn't the same after he got hurt. He inherited a program that hadn't been to a bowl game in 6 seasons, and he's taken them to 2 straight bowl games. So, again, they are moving forward, but there is a question for this fan base. Is it going to work? Troy Dannon, their AD, has made comments preaching patience. The schedule sets up for a hot start, really hot start. Really good shot at being 5-0 for the Cornhuskers. Nobody is expecting them, at least in my estimation, to beat Indiana or Oregon. I know they would love to, but both of those games are in October. The pressure point game for me is Washington. Washington, October 31st. That's the one that could send the entire season in a different direction, even if they were to lose to Indiana and Oregon. Let's say, and listen, no fault in that. All right, tip your cap, and you're like, okay, those programs, I think, likely at that point will be sitting in the top 4 or 3 in the country. But then Washington comes in, and Washington's one of those teams that you're like, we've got to run the middle of this conference. Washington wants to do that with Jed Fish, and Matt Rhule wants to do that with Nebraska. And so that one kicks off this stretch where all of a sudden then they go at Illinois. They still have Ohio State on the schedule. They've got Iowa. If they lose to Washington, you could see another one of those downward spirals, and that's not Listen, no amount of patience is going to help a downward spiral at the end of the year. I think starting out hot is going to be really, really important for them. If they pick up that 6th win against Washington, you could be looking at a 7th win against Illinois. They've got Rutgers on the schedule. That could be an 8th win before you play Ohio State. That's, I think, what they need to do. But for him personally, the question is this going to work? Again, you got to have a hot start, pressure point. That Washington game, I think that one is a big one. Let's move to the ACC. How about Dabo Swinney? What are we doing with Dabo? What are we doing with Dabo after your boy sitting in this chair last year crowned them as my preseason national champ? How about that for a pick? What a bonehead. My goodness. Rethink everything about myself. I know that makes some of you happy. Others, you don't care. What are we doing with Dabo? Didn't go well last year. Started number 4 in the preseason. I wasn't the only one hot on Clemson. They started number 4. Finished 7-6. Guys, what are we doing? And all those draft picks, experienced quarterback. Clemson has not finished in the top 10 since Trevor Lawrence. That was 5 seasons. Dabo's in his 18th full year at Clemson. He's been heavily criticized for not adapting to the new world of college football. He has slowly come around. I think Clemson fans at this point are saying to themselves, we like you, but... So that's the category he falls into. We like you, but. There is a huge pressure point for Dabo. Miami in their 5th game. Now, they've got LSU. It could be LSU. You might be right. But Miami's in conference, and Clemson has run the ACC. Run it. They have dominated the ACC. Now it seems like Miami's conference, and you start to wonder to yourself, what's the gap? What's the margin? How wide is it? Is Miami head and shoulders above Clemson? They were a year ago. Miami's going to be loaded again. Miami's going to be fantastic. They open with LSU. That's going to be tough. If that goes poorly and then Miami goes poorly, we like you, but turns into something very different. Very, very different. We move on. How about Lane Kiffin? Excuse me. Lane Kiffin, all in. LSU has gone. Not only on the roster, but with Lane, right? I mean, we saw that in that ridiculous coaching search. I know they're in a honeymoon phase right now after Brian Kelly. As long as Lane doesn't have some fake accent, I think he's going to be just fine. LSU always has high expectations. They spent plenty of money right away, but the pressure is not really there. I think they're just happy he's there. Just happy you're here. LSU is just happy Lane Kiffin is there. And I think that is a realization of what LSU has been recently. You see, they have only finished in the top 25 2 times since they won a national championship in 2019. That was their only college football playoff appearance. The only one, 2019. So then you start thinking about their pressure point game. Like, when are people going to go from just happy you're here to maybe something else? And again, not that he's on a hot seat, by no means. But again, this is just the pressure index, pressure for these coaches. And Lane's going to be under pressure November 7th against Alabama. I think that one is going to be the pressure point. The first month of the season is very tough. Clemson, that one's at home. Ole Miss in the return, that one's going to be wild. You've got A&M at home. The schedule lets up a little bit through the middle, so there's some time to pile up some wins. I think they're going to be able to do that. But a loss against Alabama at home November 7th, that would crank up a little bit of the, hey, wait a second, this is not why you're here. They've got their next 2 games after that Bama game, Texas, and a trip to Neyland. So again, not an easy schedule. I do have this sneaky feeling, though, that Lane and LSU are going to roll out against Clemson, and we're going to all open our eyes and be like, oh, that's one of the best rosters in all of college football. They've certainly spent enough money on it. That roster is north of $40 million by all accounts. Again, I don't know that officially, but speculated to be north of $40 million. And so they might just be really, really good. We know they're going to be good on offense. I think one of the questions I would have, and it would go into this pressure index, is Blake Baker and the relationship Lane has with Blake Baker. We'll see how that goes. How about Lincoln Riley at USC? Ooh, okay. I think there's some pressure here. There is some pressure, and I'm a big fan of this USC team. I know people listen. I live around a lot of Trojan fans, and a lot of them listen, and they come out and they're like, do you really think USC could be something special this year? My answer is yes. This is year 5 with Lincoln at USC after he signed that 10-year, $110 million contract to leave Oklahoma. The Trojans fans, I think they expected a start that they got in almost getting to the playoff and then sustaining that. And they obviously took a couple of steps back in their next couple of years. He went to the 4-team playoff, 3 years as a head coach at Oklahoma, one other trip as an offensive coordinator. And now you look up and you're like, 27 teams have made the playoff, and USC is not one of them. I mean, they should be better than this, and we know that. They were a game away that first year from going. Caleb Williams got hurt against Utah in the Pac-12 championship game, and they ended up losing that one. I think the mood of Trojan fans about Riley is that it's time. It's time. I think it's time for Lincoln Riley. I think it's time for this roster. I think it's time for USC. There's a real opportunity to make a mark this season with this team. This is a team that went 9-3 last year in the regular season. This is a team that beat Michigan physically on their home field. This is a team that made some bonehead mistakes against Notre Dame, but otherwise played pretty strong in that game. The only game that they were, I thought, overmatched was actually Oregon on the road. The other game that they lost was Illinois, and let's face it, like, they should have beaten Illinois. They go down and score. I thought they scored too early. I understand. I've texted with Lincoln about that. I felt like they scored too early, but it's like, hey, you got to put the ball in the end zone. I understand that, and their defense didn't hold up. The pressure point game for Lincoln and USC, I don't think it's Oregon at home. I really don't. I think it comes off of the back-to-back home games. They've got Oregon and Washington, but then it's really a crucial 3-game stretch, not a 2-game stretch. I think you've got to at least split at home, Oregon and Washington, but then they go to Penn State. That's the pressure point game right there. That's likely going to be a whiteout Saturday, October 10th. And Penn State's schedule is not difficult at all. I think Matt Campbell has a good chance to win 10 games, but this would be a monumentous win for USC. It really would. Winning a road trip across the country would show things are totally different, that Lincoln Riley has built them up at the line of scrimmage, that they can compete for a playoff spot. And if they win that game, they might just go to the playoff. It's time. It's time for USC. It's time for Lincoln Riley. How about Kyle Whittingham at Michigan? I think he falls into the same category as Lane Kiffin. At this point, for Michigan fans, it went so off the rails for the Wolverines that you look up and you're like, you're just happy that Kyle Whittingham is here, aren't you? I think you are. Kyle's one of the best head coaches in the entire sport, and you're just happy he's there. I think that there is, as I would categorize it, kind of like the football adult in the room. He comes in, and let's be honest, the way the things that ended with Sharon Moore, I mean, things could have gone south in a hurry from Michigan, in particular with the timing of everything that happened. Where were they going to go coaching-wise? And they get Kyle Whittingham, of all guys. We thought he was retiring, and he's not. Instead, they bring in, I think, one of the best coaches in America. Michigan got a full offseason with Whittingham in charge, so they should be in good shape to hit the ground running this year and build off of the 9 wins. By the way, that was a 9-win team. In the middle of all that dysfunction, they still won 9 games with a true freshman quarterback. Now, the pressure point game for Michigan, I think, is a home game against Penn State October 17th. Now, they would still have games against Indiana, Oregon, Ohio State after that game. So if you don't beat Penn State, it becomes very problematic. Very problematic. So Whittingham, that's the pressure point game. I know Ohio State is always a huge one. I think Oklahoma is going to be a monster one. Gus, Jenny, and I will be there for Oklahoma. But that's what Kyle Whittingham is. I think Michigan fans are just happy that he's there. How about Shane Beamer in South Carolina? Year 6 for Beamer at South Carolina. He's 33-30. I think they wanted more out of Beamer. They gave him an extension after that 2024 season, finished with 9 wins. He had more wins than any other South Carolina coach through 4 years, but then last year went really poorly, right? Last year, they started the season in the top 15, got as high as 10 before the wheels absolutely came off. They finished 4-8. 4-8. He needs to get things stabilized. Otherwise, I think things could get uncomfortable for him. They do have Lenore Sellers. They do have Dylan Stewart, cornerstones to build around for this roster. There's no doubt. The schedule doesn't do Beamer any favors. And I think that their fans are looking around and they're asking themselves, is this going to work? I think he's in the Matt Rhule category. I really do. I think the pressure point game is Tennessee at home, October 24th, as the first game in a brutal 6-game end to their schedule. You lose that one, and yikes. Yikes. Because they're going to have at Oklahoma, Texas A&M, at Arkansas, Georgia, at Clemson. Hello. Things could go south in a hurry, and they're already asking themselves, is this going to work? That Tennessee game, that becomes a vital game right there. So I think Shane Beamer needs to win that one. There's no doubt. Keep the fan base happy, because right now they're asking themselves, is this going to work? Speaking of is this going to work, let's go to Bill Belichick at North Carolina. Let's just put him in the category right away. Bill Belichick, is this going to work? I think the fans are wondering that about North Carolina. Belichick going to Carolina was one of the biggest surprises that I had on my bingo board that we've seen in recent years. First year, 4-8. Those 4 wins were against Charlotte, Richmond, Syracuse, who was terrible, and Stanford. We didn't see a buttoned-up, fundamentally sound team that we are accustomed to seeing from Belichick. That's a big adjustment to move to coaching from coaching pros and men to 19-year-olds. UNC is paying Belichick $10 million per year, 5 for 50. This time last year, we were talking about the $1 million out in his contract if he decided to leave. Belichick made one major change in the offseason. He did bring in Bobby Petrino to be the offensive coordinator, and Bobby's a very good offensive coach. But is this going to work? I think the pressure point game is right out of the gate. Week 0, TCU in Dublin. If that doesn't go well, I mean, TCU hammered them last year. Hammered them. That wasn't even close. And so they've got to show at least some margin of improvement. Week 0, TCU in Dublin. That was a blowout last year. After TCU, they'll face Clemson in the 3rd game, Notre Dame in the 4th game. Again, those aren't measuring sticks for me for North Carolina and Bill Belichick. For me, it's more TCU Week 0 in Dublin. And Dan Lanning at Oregon. Let's talk about Dan. I think he's one of the best coaches in America. I really do. Every single year, Oregon has taken a step forward under Dan Lanning. They were good his first year. Then in his second year, they won the Big Ten. They were the number 1 seed and got beat by the eventual national champ, Ohio State Buckeyes. Then he goes to the semifinal. So he wins a playoff game. Goes to the semifinal. Remember, they beat up on Texas Tech in the, the Orange Bowl. And then Indiana housed him and scored over 50 points. He's averaged 12 wins per year in his first 4 years as a head coach. Lanning has a group that is built to win it all this year. I really believe that. Stud experienced quarterback, talented defensive line, also experienced, could have gone to the National Football League, came back. They've got a ton of talent at wide receiver, running back. A lot of those guys were young. The secondary was young. At 40 years old, he'd be the youngest coach to win a title since Bob Stoops did it in 2000 at Oklahoma, if he's able to win a title. But I get the sense that Oregon fans are thinking to themselves, not it's time to, it's our time. It's our time. Truth be told, I saw Dan this offseason, and he was like, hey, pump the brakes a little bit on the expectations. That's not good for anybody. And I'm like, well, I don't think you can pump the brakes on the expectations. Taking a step forward every single year, that's a huge deal, Then you come into this season with all of that experience and you look up and you're like, where's the pressure point? Where's the pressure point game this year? I don't think it happens until the CFP. You look at their schedule, their toughest games are going to be going to USC, who's very good at home, going to Ohio State, obviously going to be a monster, Michigan at home, Washington at home. Those are all decently difficult games, one of them being a rivalry game. There's no doubt. But the question isn't about whether Oregon is going to go to the CFP or not. In my mind, the question is, what do they do once they're there? So the pressure index really heats up for Dan Lanning once they're in the CFP. That's when we can finally evaluate what Dan has built at Oregon in his tenure there as a head coach, one of the youngest in America. I think it's their time. And so it's time for Dan Lanning at Oregon. That's going to be a remarkable story for them. I think it really will be. And they're going to be very good. They're going to be very good. There you go. 10 names, 5 categories. There you have it. The coaching pressure index for 2026. Again, remember, 3 of these guys last year got fired. Let's hope that doesn't happen. I don't want to root for anybody to lose their job. I certainly don't. And let's hope that they all have success. But not everybody can have success, as we know. You can have success. You can do that by leaving a comment down below on the YouTube page. It's fun. It's a nice community down there. Throw a comment down below. Do you agree? Do you disagree with some of these? Are there other coaches that I missed that you would like to put, heavy pressure on? Throw those down into the comments. If you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel, please do that. That would be awesome. Wherever you're listening, please rate and review us, wherever you get your podcasts. And then wherever you social media, we're there. You can follow us at Joel Klatt Show. We're here every Monday during the offseason, getting you all set for the college football season. Until then, have a great week.